So I'll be discussing the RCT results of the first ever cloud-based clinical study of a CADX system. And it's on a system called CADX Remote Vision. Here are my conflicts of interest. So what's unique about this system is it's the only CAD-E and CADX system that is cloud-based. So what do I mean by this? So all other CADX systems use locally deployed hardware system. And so the way that they work is they have their AI algorithm deployed within, say, a piece of hardware like a computer. That computer is then connected to your endoscopy stack, and it's like a closed-loop circuit. Whereas what we do here is we use this cloud-based format. So image data is sent from the stack to the cloud using the hospital's internet infrastructure. It's within the cloud that the AI algorithm resides. It processes these images in real time, and then if appropriate, it feeds back the bounding box or the product diagnosis for CADX. Now, the reason why this is so important is we're quite early on in the translation of AI, believe it or not. We're going to have much larger training data sets. We're going to have multiple new updates, new versions of existing models. In CADX, we'll have new classification models. We'll have new systems that will be developed. And what this workflow lends itself to is on the back end, all of this can be implemented. So as the front end uses the endoscopist, you're using the latest piece of kit at all time. Kind of similar, if you like, how we have apps on our phone or how our phones are regularly updated with a click of a button. That's almost the idea of what we're trying to implement here. But the big question is, does this cloud-based concept actually work in a healthcare system, in this example of the NHS? In terms of the CADX output, it's adenoma or non-adenoma. So non-adenoma is made up of SSLs and hyperplastic polyps. The category of uncertain. This typically occurs if you've taken a still image of poor quality, i.e. there's motion artifact or blur, or there's light speculation. And so in that case, you just take a new image to get an up-to-date diagnosis. The aim of this RCT was to evaluate the CAD-E function of CAD-E, but a secondary outcome was to evaluate CADX. And a really important study in my eyes because it's the only RCT that's been done in non-expert endoscopists. So the use case for CADX has always been to improve the performance of our non-expert endoscopists and raise their optical diagnosis accuracy. And we've actually only ever had one other RCT in CADX, so it's pretty novel stuff. So we had 9 sites spread across the UK. 5 of these were academic hospitals, 4 were community hospitals, so we had a nice spread across the UK. We had 26 endoscopists, a very healthy number. You'll notice that more than half of these endoscopists were actually female endoscopists. And we captured the whole breadth of our non-experts. So we verified everyone's ADR based on at least 100 of the most recent procedures. Roughly half of them had an ADR between 21 to 30%. The other half had an ADR of 20% or less. So we really had that whole breadth of non-expert endoscopists. And we also included all levels of seniority and speciality performed colonoscopy in the UK. So going through the recruitment flowchart, we have the standard of care arm. So this is when a human will optically diagnose a polyp on their own. And then you have the CADI arm, which is when the human optically diagnoses with the assistance of the CADI system. It's important to highlight that randomization was stratified by endoscopists. So each endoscopist did roughly half their procedures without the CADX system and the other half of the procedures with the help of the CADX system. So looking at the standard of care arm, we had 270 polyps with a high confidence rate of about 80% in the optical diagnosis. Looking at the CADI arm, so this is human plus AI, you can see that there's 253 polyps with a high confidence rate of 84%, so about a 4% increase from baseline. But there's a third analysis that we did here, which is the actual autonomous performance of the CADI system. So in these 253 polyps, how did the CADI system function when you take humans out of the loop? So we're going to go on to the results now, and we're going to start off with just pure baseline competencies. So this is irrespective of the level of confidence that the human had in their optical diagnosis. In terms of the actual difference column, we're always referencing the autonomous CADI system as the reference point. So we'll start with humans on their own compared to AI on their own. And what you see in all 3 of these subgroups is that the CADI system far outperforms the humans. So you see for all polyps, there's a 10% adjusted difference in accuracy. For small and diminutive polyps, it's 13%, and then diminutive polyps is 7%. And you'll notice a very robust performance of the autonomous AI system. So pretty much all the metrics are above 85%. So what happens when we have humans plus AI and we compare it to the autonomous AI system? So these are looking at the exact same polyps in the same arm. Well, you actually see a similar story. So the CAD system outperforms human plus AI. So you have a difference of 6% for all polyps, difference of 8% for small and diminutive put together, and a difference of 9% for just diminutive polyps. So what we're actually seeing here is humans are lowering the performance of autonomous AI. Now we start incorporating the level of confidence of the endoscopist. So we're looking at high confidence optical diagnosis of small and diminutive polyps. You see a baseline performance of humans at 78% accuracy, which pales in comparison to the autonomous AI system, which is 88%. How did humans perform when you're given the actual CADX output? Their performance is about halfway in between where they were at baseline and where the autonomous AI system is. Moving now on to diminutive polyps. So like I was saying, this was a secondary outcome, so these results are not significant, but nonetheless, they bring very important insights. So when we look at sensitivity, which is the diagnosis of adenomas, you can see a baseline performance of only 77%. Humans, the CADI system, much more robust at 87.5. And what we actually see here is that the human plus AI actually goes closer to the autonomous AI function. But where we see positive in the sensitivity, we get negatives in the specificity. So you actually see a drop in performance of human plus AI compared to their baseline performance. And so what this means is that in terms of overall accuracy, we're not actually seeing much improvement or any improvement at all in the performance of these non-expert endoscopists when they're using the CADX system. And what's most alarming about this is the fact that actually the CADI system is actually performing quite robustly. So we have an accuracy of 87%. And what's happened as humans is we're lowering that performance threshold. So moving on to diminutive rectosigmoid polyps. So this is alluding to our diagnose and leave strategy. What's most important here is sensitivity to diagnose adenomas. Because if you misdiagnose an adenoma, you're going to incorrectly leave that in, and that could potentially one day become a PCCRC. And probably one of the most alarming things I saw in this study is the baseline performance of the non-expert endoscopist was 53% to correctly identify adenomas. So given that this paradigm is in essence adenoma versus non-adenoma, or adenoma versus hypoplastic if you like, that's basically as good as flipping a coin. So it's pretty alarming, and most of these endoscopists do perform diagnosis lead in their practice. You see the performance of CADI here is about 73%, and quite reassuring when you see that when humans were given the CADI system, it did bump up towards the performance closer to what the autonomous AI system is performing at. And then finally, just quickly moving on to the PIBI outcome, so accept and discard. There's a 90% threshold that's set by ASG for correctly predicting colonoscopy surveillance intervals when using your high confidence optical diagnosis of diminutive polyps. And kind of a similar story emerges here. So you see the CADX system on its own surpasses the 90% threshold, but actually when you give that CADX system to the humans, you're not really seeing much improvement. So to conclude, I think first and foremost, we've clearly demonstrated proof of concept that this cloud-based system works in the NHS. This is spread out across 9 trusts in the UK, with a mixture of academic and secondary care hospitals. We've actually demonstrated very robust results for the CADI system. So in the majority of these analyses, it was well in the high 80s in terms of sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy. And probably not too surprisingly, given that as a non-expert cohort, the CADX system outperformed the non-expert endoscopists. But I guess what's slightly surprising is when you give these non-expert endoscopists the CADX answer, the end result is humans actually lower the end performance. And what this really alludes to is a really important point, which is the human-computer interaction with CADX is clearly much more complicated than, say, it is for computer-aided detection of polyps. And there's a similar study that was recently published in Canada. That's the only other actual RCT in the field of CADX, and they had pretty much the exact same findings. When you put the human in the loop, it actually dropped the performance compared to the baseline autonomous AI system. And I think it's very much a research priority for us in the community to try to figure out what these complex HCI interactions are and how we can improve them. Just want to take a minute to thank all of our collaborators and welcome any questions.
take a very quick question in the sake of time. So, Mo.
Well done, Aaron, as usual. Fantastic presentation. I guess my main question would be, you nicely described the benefit of having a cloud-based AI system, obviously as compared to a locally deployed device. But that also comes with some challenges, and I refer mainly to any governance issues. And if there's any issues with the IT infrastructure, does it allow this sort of approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started this study in 2020, there was a lot of challenges to overcome. But like all different areas in the world, cloud-based is becoming increasingly more common in our day-to-day practice. And what I've seen is year on year, it's become much easier to deploy cloud-based systems in a healthcare infrastructure. Trust are finally starting to have a bit of more of a streamlined process, but there are still variations from trust to trust. But for you as a clinician, you don't have to get involved with that, right? That's the responsibility of the vendor directly communicating to the IT department or business intelligence service to sort those problems out.
Thank you very much. I think in the sake of time, we have to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.